Welcome to the Waynesville Rotary Zoom meeting for July 24th, 2020. Today's speaker is former Waynesville Mayor Gavin Brown discussing reflections on leadership.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair. As we raise our voices,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
The four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I have a couple of announcements. First is that we will be having a joint board meeting this coming Tuesday, the 28th of July at 3:30 p.m. with the Waynesville Rotary Foundation Board to talk about the situation we have with the money we've been borrowing from them. The second thing is, I noticed today online that there will be a new My Rotary program coming out in the next week or so. So if you've not established your My Rotary account, go online and do that and be watching for the new changes that come along next week or so. That's all I had. Cecil, do you have any?
I would remind folks that we do have a YouTube channel now, and the meetings are being recorded and put up on YouTube, and I invite you and encourage you to share that information with some of our members who cannot or have not joined us, and invite you to go check them out and subscribe to them. And if you like them, give them a like, and if you don't, tell me about it. That's all I'd have for today.
I'll say this, I did watch it and it was very good video.
Thank you.
Well done, very good.
Thank you.
All right, Cecil, thank you very much. John Keith, that means you're on board to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, President Steve. Well, introducing our speaker today, I've only known him for 13 years, so I can look around and see that most of you have known him a lot longer than that. So besides having a brother in this list, most of you have known Gavin. But I do want to point out that I've besides obviously being our past mayor and successful attorney for decades, he has done a lot to give back to our community. For those that haven't had the pleasure of working with him in the legal aspect, I have in the real estate field for over 10 years. And I work with a lot of different attorneys, and there's certainly some great folks out there, but Gavin has an unbelievable knowledge of what has transpired in our county that has more than once come to my benefit in saving me from making mistakes in compliance. He also, though, has an uncanny ability to make clients comfortable. His bedside manner is incredible, and you know, the paperwork today to do a real estate transaction is about that thick, and it can be intimidating for those folks that have not been through that process recently. And he's heard me say this 100 times, but he can defuse that anxiety immediately when they look at that package. And he says, basically, Mr. or Mrs. Doe, if you don't pay, you don't stay. And they all just relax immediately, realizing that we can make it through this process. This month, we're continuing on our leadership focus. And so with his leadership role in the community aspect, I thought it'd be interesting for him to share some of his reflections on his leadership experiences. I've enjoyed having Gavin as my next door neighbor, for those that don't know. And ever since COVID-19, we've been out back barbecuing, weather permitting, and sometimes even when the weather hasn't been permitting. And I found not only has he been a great attorney and mayor and all those other things, he's a pretty prolific writer, if you followed him at all on Facebook, but he's one heck of a great storyteller. And in a time where we can't do things outside the house as much as we wanted, I've appreciated every day, because I've only heard stories since middle March, and I don't think we've even hit the top of the iceberg on this. But I appreciate him coming today. He's in the next room in my building because he's next door, and want to make sure we had the technology working. And I just want to welcome Gavin to the Waynesville Rotary Club today.
Cesar, you'll have to unmute him, I think.
He is unmuted. Gavin, can you raise your volume on your microphone? We can't hear you.
If I need to, I'll bring him in here.
That may be a good idea, John.
All right, hold on. Gavin, just come use mine and we'll sort it out later.
Gavin, meet John Keith. John Keith, meet Gavin Brown.
I'm back.
There you are.
Now?
Yep.
Okay. Once again, I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I made a grievous error when I chose to speak behind Heather. Beautiful, experienced, erudite, all those attributes that you want when somebody is presenting a situation to you. Never follow a beautiful woman is the other answer that I'd give to you. The second thing I would like to do is to point out that I have a good friend here today, Marcy O'Neill. She and I shared any number of good times together and bad times together. Hopefully she'll chime in anytime I say something that's wrong. And I know Marcy well enough to know that she will. Standing back in the crowd is not something that Marcy does very well. John didn't give you a great litany of my experiences, my training, my education, any treatises I had written, books I had written, courses I had taught, Nobel Peace Prizes I may have won, mainly because I never did any of that stuff. So I'm not quite sure why John picked me to speak on this subject. Accordingly, I would warn you that anything I say today should be used only with the premise that there is no warranty with my statements. In other words, buyer beware for anything I say today. The key to leadership, in my estimation, is having sort of a plan or a program that you follow. I took the word leader, L-E-A-D-E-R, many years ago, and sort of wrote out things that were applicable to that. The L for me always stands for listen, L-I-S-T-E-N, listen to what's going on. God gave us one mouth and two ears. We probably should listen twice as much as we talk. And I have tried to do that over my years in addressing problems, whether they be with the town or any other entity that I was serving on. The E stands for I, E-Y-E. Make sure that you look at every possibility and everything that's going on in the situation. To immediately jump to a conclusion is probably a big mistake because you'll invariably have the wrong information. So use those eyes. Once again, God gave us two, only one mouth. The A stands for ask. I always make it a point to try to ask the pointed questions, the probing questions, to make sure I have accurate information. The worst thing to do is to go into a meeting and not know what the vote's going to be. And I've said that on any number of occasions. I make sure I ask everybody what they're thinking about, so when I sit down and gavel the meeting to order, I customarily know what the result is going to be. Surprises are something that leaders just don't like to have. The D is when you make your decision that you actually have listened and you have looked at the stuff, at the information, and you've asked the appropriate questions. The E stands for engage the people that are going to be involved in the process. It also says it stands to enlist the people that are going to be involved in the process. In short, don't be dictatorial in your style. All you'll get is a lot of kickback from the people that didn't have an opportunity to talk about the situation. And finally, the R stands for revisit. And that is probably the most important part of your leadership style. Always make sure that you go back and look and see what you actually did and what you were trying to achieve. To simply go blindly forward every time you make a decision or enter into some type of agreement is a waste of time. So spend a lot of time looking at where you've been, where you're going, and how you got there. I don't believe in the current political manner of operation. I'm not a finger pointer. I'm not a chest thumper. That's just not who I am. I've always tried to build coalitions, partnerships, friendships. In short, I'm one of those people whose negotiating style is win-win. I don't want to leave the room when there's only one winner and one loser. That's probably going to come back to haunt you at the end of the day. So accordingly, I've always, in my law practice and in my positions as chairman of any groups and as mayor, have tried to make sure that everybody left the room with something in their hands. Now, my background is not extensive. I did serve as the chairman of Region A for about 5 or 6 years. I was the chairman of the Mountain Projects. I was the chairman of the Haywood County Economic Development Commission for a number of years with Mr. Clasby as the executive director. And of course, I have served as mayor for 12 years. Today, I'm going to use my mayor's position as sort of an analogy or the situation that I'm going to refer to when making comments. I've been in 8 political races and I've won 6 of those, and I lost 2. If you go 6 for 8 in baseball, you're an all-star. You get a big salary. In the political world, that's not good. Every politician wants to win every race he ever enters. If you think you're going to lose, just don't do it. And that's true of any other position of leadership. If you really have self-doubts about engaging in that process, simply bow out and say, thank you, but I can't do this at this point in time. The essence of any type of leadership position, though, is you need to assess your personal goals, what you're trying to achieve. If you're looking for accolades and plaques and a big funeral and a 3-page obituary, you're probably in a leadership position for the wrong reason. And in my estimation, you're trying to do what the Rotary motto is, service above self. You shouldn't be engaged in any type of promotion for your betterment or anything of that nature. And I'm pretty staunch on that. I just feel that it's not appropriate to try to take advantage of the situation or the leadership position that you're in. It's important also that you recognize the goals of your constituency. If you come into a situation where you know that you are sort of divergent from the goals of the citizens, in my case, is the mayor, then you're probably going to make a big mistake. One of the situations that I can bring to mind was when, back in the early 2000s, when the town decided to adopt a very progressive land use plan. I may have been a little naive in that one. I don't know that all the citizens were on board, and I'm speaking about friends of mine who really didn't believe that the progressive land design standards that we implemented were really beneficial to them and may have been detrimental to the community. I learned from that pretty quickly. The next time through, I made sure that I did what I told you earlier. I made sure that everybody was engaged in the process. If they have buy-in, then they'll likely support it, even though they may not agree with it. The interesting thing about any leadership position, though, is you need to make sure that you're focusing on, well, put it this way, you focus on solutions, not on the problem. If you spend too much time beating up people about the mistakes they made and something along that nature, you're really not advancing the situation. I've always said that it's necessary that you look for solutions. Be positive about the situation. It's an important component of any leadership position. The next question you should ask yourself is, who are you leading? Who is behind you, so to speak? I should comment that it's difficult to, if you're going to be lead an orchestra, you actually turn your back to the people that you're working with, and that's sort of an uncomfortable position. But it's important to remember who are the people that you're leading. When I won my election for mayor in 2007, I thought I was leading the citizens, so to speak. It became pretty self-evident after a while that I was leading any number of groups. I was leading the employees. I was leading the board itself, trying to make sure that they were all together on the same page at all points in times. Sometimes those particular groups come into conflict, and that's when your true leadership skills have to come to bear. In other words, your board may want something, your employees may want something, and the citizens want something directly opposite of that. That's when you have to go back and decide how you're going to negotiate the solution. Is everybody going to walk out of the room with something? If you're going to have a win-lose proposition, then you're going to lose a lot of your citizens, so to speak, and a lot of your support. Second question you need to ask is, what is the source of your power? What is it that you have that you can do or implement? In the case of the mayor, and Marcy can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the only two things I can do is open and close the meetings, and I can declare a local emergency if I'm not mistaken. There may be something else. So in truth, I have no power whatsoever. I can't get your son a job. I can't get somebody fired. I can't get your street paved. That's not going to happen. It just isn't. I don't have the power to do that. What I do have, though, is I have perceived power. People assume that mayors can do things like this. In my case, in North Carolina, mayors are not, typically, we're not what we call a strong mayoral type of government. In larger urban areas such as New York and Chicago, the mayors sort of run the situation. In our case here in North Carolina, for the most part, the mayor is sort of a figurehead a lot of times, but how he uses that perceived power is very important. People will come to you believing that you can accomplish something, and don't ever let them know that you can't. That's the worst thing you can ever do. Secondly, is that you have the bully pulpits. In my case, I tried to make friends with the press at all points in times. They're the people that tell the story. Your members tell the story. So what you want to do is you want to be a preacher at all points in time. You want to make sure that they hear the gospel and hear the good gospel, the good news, so to speak. If you don't do that and you're sitting back in your chair in your office and you're not engaging in that way, you have not used that authority or that power that you may have. Once again, it's not statutory. It's not a matter of law. It's just a matter of the position that you hold. You know, generally, and John and I have talked about this on many occasions, you know, you manage things, you lead people. I think that's an important principle to remember. Usually in a real estate transaction, we're dealing with emotions. In a situation with the mayor's office, a lot of time we're dealing with emotions. The cemetery, for instance, was a huge emotional event in the town of Waynesville's history while I was there as mayor. So you have to be careful about where you go to with those situations. It's also important that you recognize your own personality. I'm very left-brained and very type A. My late wife was very right-brained and very type A. It led to a lot of interesting discussions, to say the least, some of which became heated. But you have to remember who you are, and to try to act outside of your personality is an important failure. Don't do that. If you're left-brained, let the people that talk about beautiful things do that. If you're right-brained, never talk about the numbers. Don't talk about the facts. Talk about the beauty of the situation. Very few of us are able to do both at the same time. I cannot do that. I'm left-brained, and I talk about numbers, and that's my strength. So I've always made it a point to push that, but to make sure the beauty of the situation is also in play. It's leadership also requires quiet reflection, and sometimes I have to do that. And I would suggest that if you're in a position like that, go into a room by yourself and play devil's advocate, which I do on a regular basis, even in my everyday life. I ask, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Why am I doing this? So self-assessment is also an important component of leadership. Recognize your personality, though. Are you a Newt Rockney or Billy Graham and you're very inspirational? Or are you a Gandhi and very quiet in your leadership style? Don't ever try to get outside of that style, because you'll make a terrible, grievous mistake. people will know that right away and see that as a sign of weakness. If you, I just thought of something, crossed my mind. It's an old lawyer's adage. If you don't have the facts, argue the law. If you don't have the law, argue the facts. And if you don't have the facts of the law, ask for mercy. That's probably very important in any leadership position also. Sometimes you simply have to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Can you work with me on this? And to never admit that you made a mistake, to me, is the biggest mistake there is in leadership roles. Too often, people just simply keep on pushing forward and pounding the table and hitting it with the shoe, as Khrushchev did. Subsequently, it actually worked for him a little bit, but I don't believe that's a good idea in any way whatsoever. I have found that there are three common characteristics in successful leaders. First of all, they're humble. Their humility is involved in it. Never, ever, as a leader, take the credit for anything that's achieved. Make sure that your employees, the people around you, the people that work for you, they get the credit. And if you're looking for credit, then you're looking in the wrong direction. Never, ever, ever take credit for anything that's achieved by your organization. Clarity is an important thing also. Make sure that you publish and put forward what your goals and plan is. Sometimes if you don't use a loud enough trumpet, people really don't understand what you're trying to achieve. So make sure that what you have set as your goal is very simply put and very clear to the group that you're working with. And last but not least is you have to have courage. It's really easy to say yes. Saying no is a very difficult thing to do. And in leadership positions, oftentimes you have to tell people no. Telling them no in a nice way, in a way that makes them feel good about themselves is okay, but invariably you have to learn how to say no on a regular basis. A question I've asked myself on a couple of occasions is when do you stop trying to be a leader? I'm going to tell you a story about the previous mayor. Well, I was the previous one. Henry Foy. Henry was a great friend of mine. I knew him well. He was sort of a contemporary of my parents. And Henry's style was to be very quiet, but he was very articulate when he needed to be. In 2007, when we had the election, and I was standing in front of the library, canvassing for votes and shaking hands, kissing babies, and do all the things that politicians do, Henry just stood there very quietly. And his presence was, of course, what he was selling. After a couple hours, though, he walked over to me and he said, Gavin, he said, where are all my friends and supporters? You know everybody here. You're shaking hands. You're kissing babies. I don't know these people. What Henry had come to realize was that he had lost his base of support. The people that he worked with on a regular basis were no longer engaged in the process. So it's important that you recognize when it's time to step down or step down and quit. The earlier part of that story was Henry came to my office about a month before sign up for the elections, and I'd already committed myself pretty well to running for mayor. I had not started with that premise in mind when I ran for alderman in 1999, but after 2 terms and 8 years as an alderman, I thought I could add something to the equation. Henry talked to me a little bit about his legal situation, and then finally he turned to me and he said, Gavin, he said, I've been thinking about this long and hard. He said, I'm going to run again. And my jaw hit the table. I had not wanted to run against him. I hoped that he would not run, but I wasn't about to try to dissuade him from running for office. I felt that he deserved that respect and that honor, and I continued all through his tenure and his life after that to do that. It wasn't my position to tell a gentleman that you cannot run for office, you're not qualified to do that. As I noted, though, he later on recognized that he had sort of outgrown or outlived his support. So it's necessary that you always have a quitting time. Now, sometimes it's going to be by dint of statute or law. We don't have term limits in North Carolina as far as the city, as far as we're concerned in Waynesville. I may have made a mistake in running the 4th time. I didn't look at my situation and analyze the case very well. So as a leader, you should always be reflective about what you can achieve and what you're going to do. In my case, I let my ego get involved in it, and that's the worst mistake you can ever make as a leader. I really thought I was doing the best job possible. I'm now glad that I did not win in light of the circumstances that have occurred since then. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. So I'm going to call my 6-2 record 7-1. I really think the one I lost is the one I won at the end of the day. I'm going to quote you, and I have to read this because I can't memorize it. This is a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. In the late 1890s, he was the commissioner of police in New York City. And I would quote him as follows: "The best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they're doing it." I've heard that quote on any number of occasions. One of our best employees customarily used that at certain events in the town when employees would be given a higher status. This gentleman is probably one of the best employees we ever had in the town of Waynesville. He was dedicated to his employee, dedicated to the people that were working under him. It was in maybe 15 years ago, and it was during the International Day Festival. I was out sort of walking in the crowd, shaking hands, doing what politicians do. And I saw this gentleman standing at the intersection of Depot Street and Main Street. He was an impressive figure. People sort of walked away from him because they were afraid that they were in his line of sight or that somehow they were bothering him. He looked really good in his blue uniform, handsome gentleman, had hair that was just beautiful, carried his pistol like he meant to use it if he had to, but he was never going to use it unless he had to. The heat was oozing out of the pavement that day. And as I walked up to him and extended my hand to shake hands with him, I put my left hand on his shoulder. And I realized that he had his bulletproof vest on. And I said, "Bill, it's too blankety blank hot for you to be wearing that vest." And he turned to me and he said, "Sir, I would never ask my men to do anything I won't do." I assume you know who I'm talking about, but to me, he is probably the epitome of leadership in his category. He went beyond the call of duty. He was always willing to serve his men. He was always ready to serve his community. And I think if you're looking for somebody to mimic in your style of leadership, you might want to look at Bill Hollingshead. He was absolutely a wonderful person to work with. I'm also going to point out, I'm going to point a privilege now, if I might, Marcy O'Neill was also a great person to work with. I understand that there were issues at the end, but Marcy and I had a relationship where I could sit down and yell at her and she'd yell at me, and then we'd walk out of the room and we'd have a decision made. But that's the way you work with your employees or work with the people that are under you. At the end of the day, I don't claim anything about my leadership role as being essential to what you're going to do in your role as a leader. I've given you some little tidbits of things I've done over the years and how I've looked at the situation. As I said earlier, I give you no warranty as to the workability or the invincibility of any of these premises. But think of yourself once again as a leader. It doesn't take a title to be a leader. As members of Rotary, you are leaders in the community. You may not be the chairman or the president or anything like that. That is Rotarians, you are leaders, and people look to you to provide that leadership. I'll go back to your original motto, service above self, and I think that's the key to everything that we should do as leaders. I appreciate once again the opportunity to speak to you today. I will take any questions or go quietly into the night. This will be my last public appearance, though. I can guarantee you that. You will find me in the coffee shop. You'll find me working in a little store on Main Street, and no more public appearances for the former mayor of Waynesville. Thanks again.
Thank you, Gavin.
If I could just say a couple of things. One is that Gavin is everything that John said and everything that he said about himself, but Gavin is also absolutely the best boss and best mayor I ever worked for. There is nobody who is a better cheerleader and supporter of the entire city of Waynesville than Gavin. And I really appreciated the time that I spent working with you.
If I might.
Thank you, Marcy.
A lot of times people ask me what a mayor did, and Marcy just hit on it. I'm the head cheerleader for the town of Waynesville. That's really what I do. I try to sell this community to people. I try to sell it to outsiders. I try to sell it to business. And as a leader, you better be ready to sell your product, because if you really don't think you live in the best town, in the case of the mayor, or work for the best company or the chairman of this group or something like that, then just give it up, folks. Just give it up. It may have faults and there may be, warts on it, but make sure you think it's the best and you're going to make it better. Once again, I appreciate Marcy's comment. I do consider myself the head cheerleader for the town of Waynesville.
As a member of the Chamber of Commerce and attending a number of ribbon cuttings over the years, we always enjoyed having Gavin represent the town of Waynesville, because we knew we'd get some tidbit of information about either the business that was opening or the industry that the business fit in, or how it would help the town of Waynesville. So I've always appreciated working with Gavin in any of those kind of situations. But as a storyteller, you didn't give us a story, Gavin.
That's yet to be written. Actually, as most of you know, or hopefully you have, over the last several months, I've been posting on Facebook, and I'm not a fan of Facebook, I'll be honest with you. But I had no other way to tell my wife's story. So it was the only way I could find to do it. The stories and the facts in those stories are all true. Everything I've ever said about Jackie was true. But I think I may take some time and put those all together in a little anthology and put it out there in the public. And any money that's raised, I will direct towards any service that provides assistance to alcoholics. Living with one for 10 years was difficult.
George has a question.
Gavin, excellent insights into leadership. Thank you. You served some 12 years as the mayor, and we're grateful for that. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment, and what was an example of a failure?
That question I've asked myself a bunch of times. What was accomplished during my period of service as the mayor and as an alderman also, the 20 years that I spent in that endeavor? I would like to think that we made our operational, our business operations, our public works, our police department, our fire department more amenable to the public itself. Sometimes people in the public sector have a tendency to say, I don't have to listen to this person. I don't have to take anything off of them. And I think what I tried to push a lot of times was, folks, these are your customers. You have to treat them with respect. You have to listen to them. So I tried to embody that in every type of decision I ever made, is making sure that our employees and our community the people in the leadership community were engaged in that process. They were trying to make the citizens feel better about themselves and better about their community. My biggest failure probably was, and I'm going to be personal with Marcy, is that somehow I just felt that I failed her. But the thing I had to do was, once the vote was taken, we walked out, and I was still the mayor of Waynesville, and we were going to do the best job we could. And I want to thank her for her service to the community. I don't think everybody really understood how many hours she spent working as the town manager. I'd get emails from her at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. I'd go into the office just walking by there on a Sunday afternoon, a Saturday morning, and her car would be parked there. And I don't know how many times I would walk in and say, what the blankety blank are you doing here? Why don't you take some time off? It was just not her nature. She spent 24/7, 52 being the town manager of the town of Waynesville. Losing her, even though we have excellent people now in place, I think was a mistake that I allowed to happen in some form or fashion. So I'll take responsibility for that one.
Thank you.
Well, Gavin, you and Marcy and I spent 3 years having fun together, driving to Raleigh on a regular basis for what ended up being, by many definitions, a failure, in that we were unable to accomplish the goal of having Lake Junaluska annexed into the town of Waynesville. But I will always be proud of the way we, the three of us, and actually all of the people involved in the pursuit of annexation of Lake Junaluska into Waynesville, the way in which we approached this, the integrity that we had. And I can't say enough about your leadership and Marcy's partnership in that process. It's a regret that I have that we were unable to accomplish it, but we did it right. We just didn't win in the end.
If I might comment on that, I don't consider that a failure. I consider that a shot in the back. I don't think we got fair play in Raleigh, and I'll just leave it at that. But you have to be a big boy. You got to pull your suspenders up and keep on going. So when I was talking about failure, it was something that I did wrong. In that case, I don't think we collectively did anything wrong whatsoever.
I agree completely.
I suppose that matter is dead for the time being.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
I suppose that opportunity is gone by the wayside altogether.
I would assume so. I don't think that anybody involved in the process wants to spend that much time again. And sometimes maybe the community at Lake Junaluska and the community itself will be better for it at the end of the day. Is what I hope for. If they're stronger, that's all we really want, because they're an important component of the community of Haywood County itself. The number of just business visitors that they bring here all the time is important to us. So I'm cheerleaders for them. I want to make sure that Lake Junaluska succeeds, and anything that the town of Waynesville can do or I can do, I will be the first to jump up and say, let's go try this. Let's go do this.
I served with Gavin for 12 years, and one thing that he made the effort in which he alluded to, he tried to involve everybody on the board. He wanted to hear their opinions, and sometimes he had to draw it out of us. But sometimes it was kind of like herding cats, but he was able to do that. And at least in my opinion and just his actions, he was an excellent mayor. And I certainly enjoyed serving under him. And in some respects, he made, at a meeting, you would think it's easy being up there doing what he did, but that shows his ability that something that is difficult, he made it look easy, at least to those around him.
I would go back and reiterate what I said earlier about the letters and the word leader, and listening and looking at the situation, engaging the groups that are being affected by this, reviewing your decision. Those are important components of being a leader and trying to have everybody sort of on the same page. And I thought that was my job to do that. It wasn't that my decision was going to be implemented or that I had the right answer. It was simply that we had an answer that most of us could buy into.
Yeah, he provided us guidance, and that certainly is a standout quality of his.
At this point, it's probably time that I have a few words to say. I've heard a lot of yeah, don't cut it off now, because we've heard all these wonderful accolades and all the great things he does, but you need to hear the other side of Gavin, that all of these accolades and talking about being a leader. Well, I had 3 older brothers and a younger brother and a younger sister growing up. And to my recollection, I've been on this earth, I think, 66 years. And he and my older brothers never listened to anything I ever said. They never apologized for anything they ever did to me. I had a nickname that I won't reveal on this thing that was awful. And he never asked me. He always told me. The expression, well, I'll give you my middle name. My first name is Stephen. My second name is Michael. And my dad's friends and my dad's family always call me Mike. So you'll remember the expression, let Mikey do it. Well, guess what? As we grew up, I was always the one that got appointed to do it, whether it was to go get the football at the bottom of the mountain or whether it was to go out and empty the trash or whatever it was. So you just need to see there was another side to Gavin that most people don't know. And I just want you all to be aware of that I was abused as a younger brother.
Sounds like he was using leadership to get things done.
No. Not a problem.
Spoken like a true younger brother.
Very true. No, he knows I love him. I'm just giving him a hard time. But
I'll tell you this, it's been a number of years since I served on the chamber board, but active in the short time relative to all of you that I've been here, Gavin was always there. I mean, somebody said, 90% of success is showing up and being there. And Gavin was always there. He was always, you could always count on him, whether it was a trip to Raleigh, dealing with issues that we needed to go to Raleigh for as a community, or locally. Gavin was just always there. And the business community certainly appreciated that in Gavin.
Gavin, again, thank you for being with us today and sharing your thoughts on leadership and part of your history as our illustrious mayor. I think we've all enjoyed knowing you and working with you.
I want to say thank you to Mark Glaspie. Mark and I worked for years on economic development, not only in Waynesville, but in Haywood County. And I guess maybe we should focus a little bit, not necessarily on the leader, but on the people who execute and carry out the decisions of the board or whatever it is. And once again, we have several people here today. Marcy was excellent at that. Mark and I got along famously, and I think that's what probably will stand out in my own mind as I leave this earth. That I had a lot of good times with a lot of good people, and I think that's what really has been beneficial for me in the long run. I looked at the roster for the Rotary Club, and I think there's about 75 members now. I knew 71 of the 75. I knew 71 of the 75 by their first name. And I think that's what leadership is all about, is making sure that you understand who you're working with, who your constituency is, and that's what I try to do. And once again, I appreciate the opportunity to make my last and final public appearance.
We'll see how far that goes.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. I want to recognize that Rick Shaw was here. He was on page 2 of our 31 attendees, but he has apparently left and didn't even hear my introduction of him. But he was here for the majority of the meeting. Those of you who don't realize, when we have more than 25 people, you have to look at page 2 to know who the other folks are. Anything else for the good of Rotary? If not, we'll be back next week with a new president of Haywood Community College. See you then.
Thank you for watching today's Waynesville Rotary Zoom meeting featuring former Waynesville Mayor Gavin Brown. Please join us next week for an exciting program with our speaker, Dr. Shelley White, President of Haywood Community College.